This interview inaugurates the Metal Construction News Leadership Series, which spotlights individuals who have shaped the metal construction industry. Hosted by Modern Trade Communications President John Paul Lawrence. The series will investigate motivations for success, qualities of leadership, and the future of the industry. In the series debut, Lawrence talks with Rob Haddock, founder and CEO of Metal Roof Innovations Limited, the manufacturers of the industry-leading product line S5.
Today we are sitting at Rob's house in his gazebo in southern Colorado. Welcome, Rob. Thank you for being the first leader in our leadership series.
Thank you, JP. It's an honor and humbling at the same time that you would choose me to kick off your new series.
It has been said that Angelo Barzillo, the father of Galvalume, stated to you once that S5 is the greatest thing to happen to a metal roof since the creation of Galvalume. That is a pretty big statement from one of the greatest influences in our industry. How did S5 earn such an endorsement?
Well, I've known Ange Barzillo for many years, and shortly after I began to commercialize S5, he saw an advertisement for it. And matter of fact, JP, it was probably in your publication. And Ange called me up and he asked me about it, and we got to talking and about what it was and what it was for and so on. That was almost 20 years ago, and it was not long after Ange had done a field survey that was sponsored by BIEC, the licensing authority for Galvalume technology. And Ange and some guys from Butler got together to look at aged Galvalume roofs, because at that period in time, Galvalume was a technology that was 20 years or more old. And they wanted to see how it was performing. And they photo documented what they did and published it. And Ange actually helped me with some photography. He shared some of his photography with me. And he said, Rob, you know, he said, we went around all over the country looking at these aged Galvalume roofs. He said, and the Galvalume was doing terrific. It far exceeded our expectations from a corrosion resistant standpoint and service life and so on. He said, but some of the things that we saw people do to roofs were absolutely abominable. And they caused leaks and they caused corrosion and they caused problems. And he said, as I reflect back on all the things I saw done wrong on Galvalume roofs, he said, your S5 clamp would have solved 90% of the problems that we saw on these aged roofs. And so he was very commending to me about that. And he later, when BIEC actually published a book about the history of Galvalume, Ange wrote me a little note in that book, I can show it to you, that said that he felt like the S5 solution was the greatest thing to happen to metal roofing since the invention of Galvalume. So I esteem that compliment pretty highly coming from Ange.
What was the industry solution before S5?
Well, as his photographs depicted, people didn't know how to mount things on standing seam metal roofs. There really wasn't a good way to do it. And so different trades got on the roof and they mounted it by whatever means was convenient to them at the time. They set HVAC and gas piping on wood blocking, and if it was a really conscientious contractor, he used treated wood blocking, which has tannins and copper salts in it that actually induce corrosion of Galvalume. If it was a plumber, he probably put a lead flashing on there. If it was some other trades contractor, a sign contractor, or a pipe fitter or whatever, again, the wood blocking and tech screws and violating thermal movement integrity of the roof in many cases, and also hampering and adversely affecting the Galvalume coating. So people just did it by any means they could. There wasn't a right way. There wasn't a way.
Were they drilling into the roofs?
In many cases, sure. They were drilling holes in the roof, and Then they were actually pinning the panel to the structure because they'd find a purlin underneath the panel and screw into the purlin, inadvertently pinning the panel and violating the thermal movement integrity of the roof. So they did all those bad things, but no one could point to the right way to do it because there just really wasn't a right way to do it. And the whole industry at the time developed a culture and a mentality then of you just can't put anything on these roofs. You know, if you put anything on our roof, you're going to void the warranty because there wasn't a good way to do it. And so, JP, I guess another context of Ange's statement to me of why he felt like S5 was the greatest thing to happen to the metal roof since Galvalume was that at that period in time, metal roofing was beginning to emerge from a shade and shelter commodity type low cost construction method. And it was transitioning into a more sophisticated building product and building method. But yet we had this roof that had always been just a shade and shelter sort of thing. The predecessor to Galvalume, of course, as you know, was G90 galvanized. And the service life of G90 galvanized in some environments was as little as 20 years. Well, all of a sudden this product came along, this new coating, that would outlast galvanized by 2 or even 3 times. Yet there wasn't a good way to mount anything on that roof that was compatible with the life expectancy of the roof. So we've got this 50, 60, even 70-year roof now, but there's no way to mount anything to it. And so the S5 enabled the attachment of ancillaries to modern Galvalume standing seam roofing with a service life and a performance expectancy that was equivalent and even exceeded the life of the roof itself. So it really helped to propel metal roofing into being a much more user-friendly kind of roof. Who wants a roof that you can't mount anything on without having problems?